Hi everyone, so today we're going to be taking a look at PR209, or also known as Quinacridone Red. Now, various brands have different names for it. Sennelier calls theirs Quinacridone Red, Roman Szmal and Mijello calls theirs Quinacridone Cherry Red, and I believe Daniel Smith calls theirs Quinacridone Coral, but all of them are PR209. Now, this color is actually very special to me because I use it as my warm red in my palette, and it's actually one of those colors that when I discovered it, it like finally clicked to me that like, oh, this has been the warm red that I've always been waiting for or looking for, or I didn't even know I was looking for a warm red like this. But you know, basically a lot of beginner palettes, they give you PR255 or some sort of like vermilion color, and those I've always felt like were a little bit too orange or a little bit too opaque. But this quinacridone one is just like so transparent, and it's also cool at the same time, and you know I like my magentas. So yeah, anyways, let's just get straight into it so you could see what I mean. Now, I haven't done this comparison by myself, so we're going to see the similarities and differences together. Now, today I'm going to be using this brush, Rosemary & Co. Kolinsky Sable Brush Series 33. This is a size 6. I haven't used much of this brush yet, so we're going to be testing it out as well. I won't be reviewing it today, obviously, but I'm just letting you know that it's one of the brushes that I'm sort of experimenting with. Alright, our first one is by Sennelier. I'm making sure to get a lot of pigment on my brush. Ooh, that is lovely. Oh wow, beautiful. And then it washes to sort of like a warm pink, I would say. That's very beautiful. Let me push this up a bit. Okay. And then I think on screen you could probably tell that it's sort of like a middle red. And I would say it is sort of like a middle red, but like leans the tiniest bit warm in mass tone. And then once you wash it down and dilute it, it becomes more of a warm pink. Okay, next up is Roman Szmal's version, and they call theirs Quin Cherry Red. Alright, I have a lot of pigment on there. Interestingly, not as pigmented as Sennelier. And it also has that like, feels like it has that whiteness, you know. I've spoken about this before, but like a lot of Roman Szmal's colors have this like whiteness to it. Somehow it might not show on screen as well, but if you've used Roman Szmal paints before, you're going to know what I mean. But yeah, this feels like there's a bit of like some white to it somehow, and it feels a bit more, it feels the slightest bit warmer in that it looks more orange than Sennelier's. Okay, let's move on to Daniel Smith. And you could see that I have Daniel Smith here in my palette. It's this one, and I've used quite a lot of it. Oh, interestingly enough, Daniel Smith's seems a lot warmer than Sennelier's. So like Roman Szmal's and Daniel Smith's feels more orange in comparison to Sennelier. I did not expect that. Very interesting. So far, I'm actually liking Sennelier's the most because it seemed like much more pigmented. Very interesting. And now let's move on to Mijello. Alright, Mijello's is, oh wow. Mijello actually feels like interesting. I didn't expect it to be I didn't expect there to be many like differences or like large differences between each of the brands. Very interesting. Let me see if I could pack up some more pigment. Yeah. Not bad. All of them do wash to like this warm pink. I think I'm gonna wait for these to dry and then we'll be right back. All right, I'm back and these swatches are almost completely dry. There's some parts that are still wet there, as you can see, but you know what? I'm gonna go with it anyways. So all of these wash down to a very warm pink. However, in mass tone, they are quite different. So if we're going from warmest to coolest, I'd say Roman Szmals is the most warm, that leans the most orange. And then we have Daniel Smith and Mijello that are pretty close and very similar. And the last one that I would consider the coolest, which is the most red leaning as opposed to orange leaning, is Sennelier's, because in mass tone it looks almost like a PR254. Now, a few things I'd like to note is that Sennelier's and Daniel Smith's, as well as Mijello's, are very, very pigmented. However, Roman Szmals doesn't seem quite as up to par. I did do my best lathering up the pigment onto the brush, and it definitely did not get as dark as the other ones. So I think that's something you might want to consider when purchasing any of these PR209s. But generally speaking, if you like Daniel Smith's PR209 but you want a cheaper version, and if it is cheaper in your area, then I think Mijello is actually a very nice substitute. I mean, I don't think I could even tell the difference if you gave me these like separately and then just let me pick out which one is which. However, if you've tried PR209 before, like any of these, and you feel like they're still a little bit like too orange for you and you want something that's similar but leans more red, then I do recommend Sennelier. So I actually also have Shinhan PWC PR209 as well. And with this one, I don't remember what they call it, but it wasn't like Quinacridone red or anything. But it is PR209. But what I want to say is that this Shinhan PWC version is very close to Sennelier's in comparison, because I have this one, Daniel Smith's, and I got this from a dot card, so that's why I couldn't swatch it out for you here. This was one I swatched out a while back for myself. But yeah, I do remember that when I swatched this out in comparison to Daniel Smith, it did also feel just like Sennelier's. It felt like PR254. So yeah, if you were wondering what Shinhan's version is like, that's how it is. Hopefully you could see why I really like this color. It is a red, but it is a red that like leans pink when it's washed down. So the reason I have this as my warm red in my palette is because I'd say my main red that I go for is actually Quinacridone Magenta, which most of you know I really love, which is PR122. And with that one, that's actually like a magenta color, not like a red, I would say. So compared to that, this PR209 is very warm. But the reason I like it as my warm red is because it still washes down to a pink. And that still makes it sort of like a cool red, relatively speaking, of course. So that's why I really like this color, and that's why it became the warm red of my palette. Anyways, I'd love to know if you guys also use this pigment, or if you've never used this pigment, would you want to try it? Or if you're not like into reds at all in general, that's also fine too. I know a lot of people seem to use this pigment or like this color for florals, but personally for me, I just use it as my warm red and I really like it a lot. It doesn't have to be just florals. So yeah, leave your comments down below. I'd love to read them. But that's all I have for you today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to drink lots of water and stay hydrated.